brother Budo Jake in the house.
Hey, good to be here, Alberto.
It's been a minute.
Sure has.
It's been a minute.
It's probably been 10 years since we've been on the mats together.
Yeah.
Back at GB headquarters in Irvine.
Yeah. I used to see you like week in and week out.
That's right.
If it was one thing or the other.
That's right.
You guys are running basically. Well, you were like you guys were the platform for jiu-jitsu, like a Budo Jake, right? Budovideos.
Yeah. When Carlos Gracie Jr. and the rest of GB moved into Orange County, I was training there and got to know them very well. And pretty soon we were involved in I think it was the very first live broadcast of a jiu-jitsu event, Nogi Worlds,
Nogi Worlds, wow.
2009. And then it was live broadcasts on after that.
Wow. Where was that Nogi Worlds at?
It was at a university.
The Dominguez Hills?
I think it was at Dominguez Hills, yeah.
In Compton, right?
That's right. That was right. Yeah. That was the very first Nogi Worlds.
Yes. Yeah. They gave you like rash guards and stuff.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Wow. What were some of the other things you guys were involved with?
Well, after doing all the live broadcasts, then I started to make. I've always loved learning from different people. So I would go around. I'd go to GoCore's gym and learn leg locks because I wasn't learning from the Brazilians. They weren't as sophisticated on leg lock game at that time. So I'd go to GoCore's and learn from him. Then I'd come back and my friends would say, "Hey, what did you learn?" And I would show them. And then another guy would ask me, "Hey, what did you learn?" I'm like, "Man, I'm getting tired of repeating myself over and over. Why don't I just take a camera along and film it?" So I made a show called Rolled Up where I would travel literally around the world training with people and sharing my training experiences with them. And that was just so much fun, learning from people and adding to my game and sharing with the world.
Yeah. Did you go internationally?
Yeah. I went to a lot of countries in Central America, went to Japan, Brazil.
Yeah. Wow. I remember the Glover's Travels, but you guys were I remember like there were certain things like This Week in BJJ. I would watch that thing every week.
Every week, yeah, because when we were doing all the
news,
we're doing all the live broadcasts. We wanted to hype up the events, so I'd bring in different guests. I'm sorry I never had you on, but we had different people come in, and not only would we talk to them, we'd also go on the mats and do some techniques. So that was fun. I enjoyed sharing it, but I also learned so much from that as well.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so you guys were doing the live broadcast. You guys are doing the week in BJJ. You guys are doing all these spin-offs. You guys are doing like equipment too, right?
Yeah. We still have the Kaizen Athletic brand where we make gis and rash guards, and then the Nogi Industries line, make rash guards.
Oh, you guys are involved in the Nogi.
Yeah.
Wow.
So still very much involved in the jiu-jitsu world, but not so much in terms of media or live broadcasts right now. Let other people do that.
Yeah, because now people know Flow Grappling.
Yep.
I think they were after you guys, right?
Yeah, they came in and pushed us out. They had a lot more venture-backed capital to come in, and we just couldn't compete with that. So that was fine. It was a lot of work. It was very rewarding, but it was also a lot of work. So because we were doing so many different things in terms of instructionals and live broadcasts and gear. So Flow Grappling came on, took the live broadcasts out, but then we could focus more on the other things. So that's
and then the Bernardo Freer with the BJJ Fanatics, right?
Yeah.
The instructionals and some of the stuff that they're doing, right, with podcasts. It was kind of pre-podcast era, right? That your time.
Yeah, back when I was doing my show, This Week in BJJ, we were doing it live actually for quite a while. And I don't think there was any other live podcast at that time. We had people with a live chat, making comments, and that was a blast.
Yeah. Wow. It just seems like not that long ago, but it feels like a while back.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu sure changed a lot. In the early 2000s, you were right there with GB. That was a place to be. There was Roger Gracie was there. Henzo would stop in.
Yeah, everybody was united, right?
And then Ultimate Fighter came on. That blew up the scene like crazy.
What year was that? 2000?
Early 2000s, 2005.
Yeah, man. 2005.
Because things were stagnant for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? The first UFC, early
It was
90s.
still underground, right? People. It was like very niche, right?
Right.
And very underground, and we weren't sure when the next it was gonna, be a real sport, right?
Right.
And I was friends with, he's my trainer, Greg Jackson in New Mexico, and he always believed in this MMA thing, and I fought, right? Those are earlier days, but I didn't really know if it was gonna really take off or be a real mainstream sport. But he always believed, and I saw him like years later, and I think we were at some Bellator in Louisiana. And I'm like, man, you did it, you know, like you wanted to be like known as one of the best coaches, and you really believed in this thing. And now it's like, look at it now. It's a mainstream sport. Like, you're not surprised that you believed in it. It's really cool, you know, really cool to see it and be kind of, and even jiu-jitsu, right? And it's helped jiu-jitsu grow as well,
Absolutely.
right? The whole thing, the whole MMA being a mainstream sport, right?
Right. Being a sport and a fighting art. There's just room for both.
Yeah, yeah. Man, going back to your, or not going back, but going to your personal background, like, how did you get involved with martial arts? Because I know you lived in Japan for a while.
Yeah. I've been doing martial arts for, did the math the other day, 37 years now. So I started in a lot of traditional arts.
37 years.
Yeah. I started jiu-jitsu at age 30, older than most. But I'd done a lot of things before that. And yeah, I lived in Japan. And I watched the first UFC live on TV.
On TV, okay.
TV.
Yeah. I was like, live in Colorado.
Unfortunately, not in person. But before that, there was a lot of, like, you know, wrestling events and pro wrestling and things that, you know. So when UFC was advertised, I remember seeing the flyers. People were saying this is, you know, the real thing and this and that. And I thought, this isn't going to be real. This is another pro wrestling event.
Yeah.
And I was sitting back on my couch with my buddy Chris Farinetta. We were watching the event, and the very first kick where Taylor Tuli's tooth gets popped out, that's when we realized, oh, wow, this is real. And we all sat forward on the edge of our seats. And that's...
You were watching it in Japan?
No, I was in Orange County.
Orange County, okay.
But it was on live on pay-per-view.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's when we knew it was real. So I was aware of jiu-jitsu at that time, but it took me a little longer to actually get into training. 2004 is when I started with Carlos Gracie Jr. and the rest of the Gracie Baja guys. So, 20 years of jiu-jitsu this year.
Wow. And then, so what took you to Japan?
I did a homestay there when I was in high school. Absolutely loved it. I loved the culture.
It's like an exchange program?
Yeah, yeah. And I was in a very rural area. Then I always wanted to go back. So as soon as I graduated university, I wanted to go back and live there. So I went and taught English, which is what a lot of people do just to get your visa. I was able to train martial arts and just soak up the culture. And I've been back probably 20 times. I lived there for 3 years, and I've been back probably 20 times since then. Okay. Like an annual thing for me.
Okay.
I think everybody who is serious about jiu-jitsu needs to visit Japan. You should also visit Brazil, but go to where it came from, which is Japan, and go to the Kodokan. Even if you don't do judo, go there and see the world's largest building devoted to a martial art, and watch these people training, and watch the attitude in which they train. It's very respectful, very traditional. I think we can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, the museum they have there at the Kodokan.
Yep.
That old gi.
That's right.
Did you go? Did you go to the Kodokan? No. Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. The respect. It just reminds me, like, there was some years that I was going to Japan to compete, and I released those instructionals over there in Japan. I did really well. And I did some seminars there, and it was interesting because the Japanese culture is, they're super respectful, and just the way they treat you, the way they're hot, just everything, right? It's like very, like, the mannerisms, everything is like super respectful. But on the mat, it was like Brazilian style.
They wanted to test you.
No, not even that, but just, they had no manners. Like, a lot of the people in that group there, they had no manners, and it was just like, wow, this is like Brazil, and they were like acting out, I thought that was just really interesting. It wasn't Japanese style,
Right. I think not in all cases, but in some cases, the Japanese guys, they don't really fit in. They like to go to jiu-jitsu because there's less rules, whereas in judo, they're strict. But depending on the school, some jiu-jitsu gyms are a little more laid back in Japan.
In Japan, yeah. I think it was what was the name? Paraestra gym, and then I went to somebody else's gym, and it was definitely like Brazilian style, because back in those days, now it's it's very professional. People bow in, and they bow on the mat, and there's respect there. But back in those, who it was. I think right when you started, it was kind of starting to become more professional.
Right.
But before that, it was like a fight club, right?
Yep. Guys with mismatched skis, blue tops, white pants.
Just a free for all. Training in speedos, right? In Brazil, just a free for all, right? But here, then it started to get more professional. But in Japan, that carried over there at that time, you know, because I went in the early 2000s still.
Right.
So that I'm sure it's different now.
Right.
Like they have some really good schools there now too. Like what's the Conjacoma Triforce. There's some good, just really good like cultural schools, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder, like, if jiu-jitsu hadn't gone to Brazil, what would it be like now? Because when I've gotten into judo quite a bit this past year, doing more judo than jiu-jitsu right now. I see a lot that hasn't transferred over to jiu-jitsu. A lot of the pinning techniques, a lot of the throws. Like, yeah, they're there, but they haven't been taught to the level that is taught in judo.
Right, right.
And a pin doesn't really make sense in jiu-jitsu because you have to keep moving or else you'll be called for stalling.
Right.
But a pin is an essential element of self-defense. And if you don't know how to hold somebody down, like, that's kind of a problem in a real fight. So I'm really enjoying seeing what hasn't made it over to jiu-jitsu from judo.
I had Adam Wardzinski, you know, did a podcast with him, and he was talking about if jiu-jitsu should be an Olympic sport or not. What's your opinion on that?
Well, if you look back in the 90s, a big rule change took place in judo where they stopped allowing leg grabs because they watched the final matches of wrestling and judo and said, hey, this is the same sport. Guys were shooting for double legs and dumping people over. So you'd have these guys who didn't know anything about judo, big tough wrestlers, just going in there and destroying everybody. So that kind of sucks. You spend your whole life learning judo and then you get taken down by a wrestler.
Yeah.
So they changed the rules saying you can't do leg grabs anymore. So that being said, what is the difference between judo and jiu-jitsu nowadays? Of course, there's more time on the ground with jiu-jitsu than there is with judo, but it looks very similar. But to me, judo, Olympic sports should be fun to watch. And I don't know about you, but take somebody who doesn't know anything about jiu-jitsu and try to get them to watch a match, and it'll probably be a challenge for them to get all the way through it.
Yeah.
Whereas judo, on the other hand, anybody can understand, oh, their shoulders hit the mat, you win.
Or wrestling too, right?
Or wrestling as well.
Yeah.
So to me, I think it's jiu-jitsu. I don't want them to change the rules to make it more fun to watch because that'll make it less fun to do. I love doing jiu-jitsu, but I'm not a huge fan of watching most matches. I mean, there's exceptions.
So you don't think it should be an Olympic sport because it'll change the
rule set.
It'll change the art itself, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, because the Jigaro Kano, his dream was to make it an Olympic sport, make judo an Olympic sport, and it changed the essence of the sport, right?
Absolutely.
And the Gracies, Conjacoma went to Brazil, right, and taught the great Carlos Gracie Sr.
Right.
And he's like, I think he left the federation, right, the Judo Federation for a minute.
Yes.
And he's like, this is jiu-jitsu, and they kept the essence of it alive, right? And fast forward, whatever it was, 100 years or probably less, right? And the UFC, right, in the early 90s coming out with that. And it showed that this works in a real situation, real fight.
Right. I mean, I love judo, but in a real fight, the referee's not going to come in and say, hey, you've had more than 3 seconds on the ground, stand back up. So I love the fact that we can do jiu-jitsu and survive and thrive.
Yeah. Adam thought the same thing with just it'll change. It should be for practitioners, you know, and that's enough, you know.
Right.
That's enough, and that's good.
That's right.
That's why it's growing so much around the world, right? Because everybody can do it, and you can do it for the rest of your life.
And it's something that comes very natural. You know, put 2 cats together, they'll still start grappling too.
Yeah. Not everything should be an Olympic sport or be in the Olympics, right? Because then there's a whole other set of things that come with that, right? Politics and just so many other things, right?
Right. Jiu-jitsu is good the way it is. Sometimes the rule sets is a little confusing, a little hard to understand, but for the most part, I heard somebody the other day saying, why don't we call it freestyle? Because in jiu-jitsu, pretty much anything goes. So
Yeah.
I like less rules the better.
Less rules the better, yeah. I've been getting involved with the wrestling, right, and the folk style and the freestyle, and just learning the rule sets. And yeah, it's you have to learn the rule sets for everything, but it's nice to have the less rules, the better. Yeah.
So, since you've been getting into wrestling, what have you learned that hasn't really made it into jiu-jitsu that you wish you would have been exposed to earlier?
Great question, man. You know, I've been around just because I fought, you know, so I was around a lot of back in the day. I wasn't around Olympic wrestlers and things like that, or gone to seminars, right? Because I was in Brazil. But when I came back to the U.S., I was lucky enough to kind of go to some workshops and some seminars with some Olympic guys, you know, and really pick up a lot of the different, you know, just techniques of, you know, takedowns and controls and things like that, which I added to my game. And of course, my students were wrestlers, right? And so I was able to pick up a lot of things. But I think, man, they just the takedown game in general, you know, like just spending more time there, you know, because, well, I fought also, right? I fought, you know, but I think just overall, like the game should be complete, right?
Right.
And so like, you know, it's like a deeper question, right? But I think I wish I would have focused more on being the best jiu-jitsu athlete and practitioner that I could be with a really well-rounded game, instead of just worried about winning tournaments, you know, and being a champion.
Right. Because the problem is the rule set. If you're only rewarded 2 points for a takedown, like, do you really want to try that hard for it and expose yourself?
Right. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Totally not.
So you might as well just pull guard.
Yeah, for sure. And that's funny, right? My daughter, we were talking about my daughter before, but that's what she did. You know, it's like much easier to just pull guard, try to submit the guy or submit the person, than to work on the takedown, because the person is going to probably pull guard anyway on you.
Right.
So it takes away that whole aspect of an important part of the game, right?
That's right.
And if you want to make it like a real fight, that should be emphasized, right?
Mm-hmm. And man, people complain about guard pulling, but have you watched some of the ADCCs lately where it's just pushing matches for 5 minutes? It's so boring.
Yeah.
So might as well just pull guard and get to where you're strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I don't like the looks of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, man. Yeah. I can't believe it's just the time flies. I saw a post, right? Like, was it last week or a couple weeks ago? And I was like, oh man, Budo Jake, what has he been up to? What's been going on? Because I used to see you like every week when I first moved to LA in 2007. You guys were the everything in jiu-jitsu, between your TV shows and the streaming and the everything. You guys had everything going on.
Yeah, I haven't been as active on social media, but I've still been training. I've never stopped. You know,
Never stopped.
People ask me like, how do you keep going? And my answer is like, I don't know how to stop. Like, I love doing jiu-jitsu, and I love gi and no gi equally, 50%. So I spend about half my time on each. And
where do you train these days?
With Bruno Paulista at Mckee Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Great guy too, man.
Great
amazing.
guy, great technique.
Yeah.
So that's been a blast. And then I'm doing judo at OC Judo with Juan Montenegro. And so almost every night of the week I'm doing something.
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember I saw a post of yours of Japan. I forgot what it was about, but it was like just the deep respect you had for Japan. And I was like, oh, this guy's a martial artist. You know, this guy's he's gonna do it till the end. You know.
Yeah. I think there's so many of the lessons that Japanese culture provides that got a little bit mixed up in Brazil that hasn't really transferred over, and mainly just respect for your training partners. You know, you're putting each other's safety in your hands, and sometimes I think there's a little too much machismo on the Brazilian side. On the other hand, because jiu-jitsu went to Brazil, it got tested on the street and it got improved to a huge degree. So I can't, I'm not slighting Brazil for that.
Right.
I'm giving them credit for developing it, but I think jiu-jitsu should be practiced in a way that's respectful to our training partners. Sometimes I see people go so hard just for the submission, and I've probably done that before myself. But
that's interesting you say that, right? Because I think it's kind of come around that way, more like Japanese style, with respect and respect for your training area, respect for your training partner. Like, the culture has definitely gotten better.
Yeah.
Compared to like back in the day, like Fight Club days.
Right. One thing I've come to learn is that some of the gyms that I know that are doing really well, not only are they teaching good jiu-jitsu, you can get good jiu-jitsu on so many places nowadays, right, especially in SoCal.
Yeah.
But it's the things that they're doing to make their students feel like a community. And a lot of guys nowadays, they're doing something in a group like this for a sense of community, not just to learn how to kick ass, but how to learn a sense of brotherhood. I think that's really helpful in this day and age when we communicate mostly through our phones.
Connection, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I always repeat this, the same guy, the Sebastian Younger, the tribe book.
Okay.
Like, we need 3 things, right? Like, in the tribe, right? One, you need to be yourself, authentic, be good at something, 2, and then like connection, right?
Right. And that's harder and harder to find these days.
And we live in a place with 10 million people, but everybody's on their phones and disconnected.
That's right.
But you come on the mat and you're become one. Deep trust. There's just a connection that you have for the rest of your life. Like how many people are you still friends with after all these years?
Right.
20 years.
Yeah.
How many people? Like, and it's crazy.
Handful. Yeah. And the great thing about jiu-jitsu is your phone stays off the mat.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
one of the
That's
few
a rule,
times where it's not in your pocket.
Yeah.
And there's something about fighting that I don't want to equate it to war, but you know, when you go through these battles with each other, like it makes you feel like a brotherhood that I can imagine people that have gone to war feel like as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Right. The you know, life or death kind of situation, but you get to live, right? You just tap out.
That's right.
But it's the same feeling. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
But you're constantly putting yourself in those positions.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you could go back in time to any point in jiu-jitsu history, where would you go and what would you do?
Jiu-jitsu history. And you used to do rolled up. You used to do the interviews, right? So you're always dropping these knowledge, these questions on me. Any time in jiu-jitsu history, honestly, man, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity that I had at my era, like the mid '90s. Like when they had the first world championships at the Tijuca Tennis Club, like pigeons and the bathrooms. It was, you know, barefoot, like it was nasty, like people walking barefoot in the bathrooms. Like, you know, did you ever go to the Tijuca Tennis Club?
I've seen tons of it.
You know, like your feet are black, you know, and you're walking on the mat. And it's just like, it's crazy. Pigeons, people chanting, like the Terere with his crew, like the, ooh, Terere, you know, just the energy, right? It was like a soccer stadium. And it was just so raw. Like, I mean, refs getting punched, right? Getting knocked out, you know, because they made bad calls, right? It was like real, right? It was like, say gangland, but it was like real, you know, real. You know, like you had to show respect. You had to have honor.
And for you to go there as an American, like that took some balls.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm grateful I had that time, and I'm grateful that I really immersed myself in that time too. So, because I look at the before era, like in the 80s, and there weren't that many tournaments. So that was kind of like the golden era of jiu-jitsu in a way, because it was still like that raw time of guys that were fighting at the highest levels in MMA or Vale Tudo were also doing the worlds in jiu-jitsu, right? And so we all as blue belts and stuff looked up at those guys, right? And we were all there competing in the same tournament. And there were only like 4 or 5 tournaments in the world, right? There was like the Team Brasileiro, the Mundials, right? The Worlds, the Pans they had like, you know, in the later 90s, right? Now, what was the first one? 97 maybe, 96 maybe. Maybe it was like right away after the Worlds when they organized everything. Yeah, the Pans, the Worlds, the Team Brasileiro and the Brasileiro. Okay, those are the 4. Those are the big ones, you know. And then later on, of course, they had the Europeans. They had the the no-gi things, right? And it added to everything. But then back in those days, that's where everybody went. And it's cool too that you had to do trials to even compete. For example, for me to compete for Gracie Barra, I had to do a trials just to compete for Gracie Barra.
Oh, okay.
You know, there was a whole tournament just to represent like Gracie Barra, because there were so many Gracie Barras, you know. And then to have a spot in the Worlds, you had to place in one of the state championships, you know, or, you know, place in a former world championship or some kind of major thing with IBJJF. So it was cool, and then it was packed, right? It was like 100 and whatever people for each division, and that's with everybody placing in their local state championships.
So it meant a lot more.
Yeah, so it was like you were a big deal, and it was before social media. Right? It was kind of like, I guess there was the internet, but not really. You got all your information from Jiu-Jitsu Magazine and Tatami Magazine.
Right. It's changed a lot.
And now, yeah, things are much faster. You can market yourself a lot easier. Not that we were thinking about marketing ourselves. It's just you yourself and, you know, and your brothers, right? Your teammates.
Right.
But I was really lucky to find the school I was at in Belo Horizonte, and with Draculino. I went to Gracie Barra first, the one in Rio, and the who's who was there at the time, right? The black belt, like so many different games, like the Nino Shemries, the Gordo, like all these guys were, directly right? Holeta, man, Holeta. And so I was really lucky that I went to Belo Horizonte, and Jacqueline was just starting out of school. So it was all like whites and blue, a couple blues. Like one of my best friends now, Sururu, was one of those blue belts, And so, yeah, I feel really blessed that I was able to be really in there, kind of like the source in a way of that era.
Yeah. What an amazing group of guys there were in those early days.
Yeah, yeah. Like watching Sal Ribeiro, watching all these guys, Mauro Biteches, Yeah. I think that's the best, the golden era. And I think Saulo Ribeiro kind of agrees, Things definitely shifted when they came over to the U.S., right?
Yeah.
You were there at the beginning. So how do you feel? Because you said you never went to the Tijuca Tennis Club?
No.
In Brazil? Okay.
I've been to Brazil, but not.
Right. So I'm just curious to see from your perspective how you felt just from watching it maybe online and watching footage, to 2007. Because you ran, right? Pretty much the streaming and stuff.
Yep.
In the first Worlds that they had in Long Beach in 2007.
Right. Yeah, when I think back if you watch those old events, like there's a lot of nostalgia involved, and I love some of those characters, but there were a lot of boring matches. They weren't really pushing the stalling calls too much. So, but when I look back on traditional, well, I guess you're going to call it traditional BJJ and modern BJJ, I see one guy at the center of that change, and that's Tereré. He was the guy who modernized the Toreando pass, the backstep pass, the leg drag, like all these things we think of as more modern jiu-jitsu. He was the guy. And the roll-up episode I did with him, if you haven't seen it, please watch that one. That was my first trip to Brazil because he's been my favorite jiu-jitsu athlete of all time. And so I loved getting to meet him. And for those of you who don't know, he's the guy that taught Andre Galvão, Cobrinha, Lucas Lepri, so many guys. But so I just love his style, his dynamic style. And personally, I relate more to that movement-based approach more than
He was a showman, too.
Sure was.
He did a show. It was like a entertainment, right?
Yes.
Jiu-jitsu entertainment.
That's right. So much charisma, that guy, and he had a lot of personal battles, but so yeah. To me, I think jiu-jitsu has improved since time's gone on. We've learned more techniques and applied it, but I can see a lot of old school guys complaining that it's less realistic, less applicable to a modern fight, with all the inversions and things that go on. But hey, that's development.
I mean, like yes, right. But then how about that whole like 50-50 kind of game that the guys are still kind of doing? Talk about non-action. That's that's modern, but that's boring.
So boring.
And just the tactical, advantage. Just the whole thing. And it's a 10-minute match.
There was one, I'm not going to name names, but there was 1 hour. It was supposed to be a no time limit super fight. These two guys got in 50-50 and stayed there for no joke for an hour.
Wow.
And they just stopped it.
Really?
So that's it. We're not going to keep going.
It was at the early days like a super fight and for an hour. And then
it's supposed to be a no time limit super fight, but the crowd and the judges, everybody had enough after an hour of 50-50.
It just scissored for an hour.
Yeah. But, that was a big problem, I think, around...
Well, that's the same thing with all these the finals of the worlds, Do
you feel like it's gotten better, though? Because I feel like when 50-50 first came out, nobody knew how to deal with it. Do you feel like people are able to exit out of the position?
I think they made some rules, right? That you can't stay there too long.
Okay.
So that was, I think, one of the changes. And I think it's gotten better because there's some counters and there's some ways to open it up now more. People understand the position more.
Right.
But I think a lot of these things still go on, that kind of, it's like anti-flow, anti-like movement, anti-jiu-jitsu in a way.
Yeah.
Like a way to stall, to win.
Yeah. I feel like that as jiu-jitsu has become more a way for people to become millionaires now.
Yeah.
People are doing less of that because you realize like you got to make a name for yourself, put on a show if you want to be successful.
If you want to be remembered, right? If you want to make an impact, right? I remember talking to Leo Vieira, and he was saying that he never thought about of course he won the worlds, he won everything, but he was always about being a showman, and his brother, I think his brother had one of the best matches with him. What's his name? Leandro with Robson Mora.
Okay.
Did you ever see that
I don't
finals?
remember that one.
Wow. Yeah, I think it was the best match I've ever seen. It was like a nonstop action, and it was just about being, being exciting. People don't remember like win or lose; they just remember how exciting you were as a fighter.
That's right.
And Leo Vieira, right? He was in that old school era, like with Jacare, as a teenager, doing Vale-Tudo matches with people trying out jiu-jitsu as an intro class, right? But he grew up in that era, right? And then he was also part of that golden era of the tournaments, right?
Yeah.
And
a lot of people don't remember his match with Eddie Bravo. They just remember Eddie triangling Hoyler, but Leo Vieira was dominant in his passing.
Yeah.
What a legend he is.
Yeah. Knew to go to the other side, just smart, right?
So smart.
That other stuff.
When you look back at the legends of the past, do you feel like their lessons have been remembered by the modern generation, or do you feel like these kids aren't remembering the lessons of the past?
That's a great question. I think that's part of my reasoning when I saw your post. I was like, man, I got to talk to Budo Jake, see what he's been up to, and just kind of talk about these things, because I think a lot of these kids they have no idea. They have no idea of any history. They have no idea of some of these legends. It's cool because if we talk about it, and then you kind of educate people on it. And I try to, talk about certain people, but there's not enough time, to really talk. So it's nice because these podcasts allow you to talk about these guys, and then you can, kind of pass those stories and the information along, right?
Right.
But I don't, I think it's very. We love jiu-jitsu, right? We love jiu-jitsu. We want to see, and the stories and the history is so amazing, right? From how jiu-jitsu went from Japan to Brazil and the Gracie family, and how judo kind of died out kind of in a lot of ways, right? Besides going to the Olympics and stuff, but jiu-jitsu blew up with the UFC, right?
Right.
And showed the effectiveness of it. And so I think just even that alone, right, with Horace Gracie and how it evolved and how it kept going, and then the worlds, like the early mundials, right, in the mid '90s, to around that time. I think it's important for people to know the stages, and I feel like Budovideos was a stage, it was an era. Yeah. After the mundials moved to the U.S. in 2007. You guys basically ran the show. You guys were the broadcasters for jiu-jitsu,
Yeah, we saw what
2007. How many years was it?
2007 through 15.
Wow, 8 years, huh?
Yeah. Because there was just a powerhouse of people at Gracie Barra headquarters that were just doing amazing things.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we got to. Not only do we have to make a permanent production of this in the form of DVD, but we have to broadcast it to the world.
Yeah.
And so lucky to be there with those guys.
Yeah, and you got to share, like, it's great because you still have that content, like, the Jeff Glover, the Glover Travels, the thing with Teddy Day. I remember seeing that, and then we were talking earlier about his movie. You have to get a VPN, right, to watch the HBO Brazil, or is it Cinemax on Brazil? One of those things. HBO, I think it's HBO Brazil,
HBO
something
Brazil.
like that. But it's the black belt, right? It's called O Faixa Preta.
Talks all about Teddy's history, and they did a really good job of dramatizing it. Usually I prefer documentaries as opposed to dramatizations, but they did a great job of bringing up all the major challenges he had in his life and recreating things. And there's some jiu-jitsu stars that you might recognize if you've been around for a while in that movie too.
Yeah, and just the story, right, of the Fin Fu and all these guys, and Andrew Gavals and the who's who, right, of a lot of the people now today, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Did you know that Leo Vieira, every tournament he's won, trophies, medals, whatever, he's given his medal or trophy away to whoever helped him the most for that camp or for that tournament.
No, I didn't realize that.
He has one trophy, I think, left because he gave it to his wife.
Okay. All right. That's nice.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, that is. I mean, he still has the memories and the rewards for it, but just the physical representation of that, just pass it on. You're not going to carry it with you anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, like a real life samurai.
But your display case downstairs looks nice too.
That's good decoration, right?
Any more competition goals for you?
I want to compete again. I have some great friends, and they're definitely motivation for me. And I think it's good for the students too. So that's my motivation to inspire and to motivate. And yeah, it's good for me too, right? It's good for me to get out there and just keep moving, you know?
Right.
Keep moving, keep doing stuff.
Movement is life.
Yeah. And so one of my I give him a shout out, Edson Sururu, and my friend Alashane too, but Sururu is like he was my main training partner back in the day. And it's a nice competitive thing that we have with each other, and like a real true brotherhood. And so we're always pushing each other. And there's certain people that just say stuff to me, and I'm like, all right, we'll see, you know.
Right.
And so he's kind of keeping me in the game, and I wanna close the bracket with him. I wanna get out there and keep it going, man, to the end, you know. We have a guy, he's almost 80, Savage. He still gets out there, competes. There's nobody even close to his age, but he's still out there, you know. And I really admire that.
Absolutely.
I wanna go out on my shield, you know. I wanna nothing to prove, but just doing my best and showing up no matter what, you know.
That's right. Yeah, that's the tough part, and that's not enough people talk about longevity in jiu-jitsu, and it's a lot of, like, you probably knew people that were way better than me that would just come up and then they'd burn out.
Right.
And they're gone. You never see them again.
Right.
And just staying healthy, staying focused. You can do this. You should be able to do this your whole life.
Yeah. 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 I look at wrestling and even judo, right? And I've been so involved with the wrestling with my daughter that I love wrestling, and I think it's an amazing sport. But like, just as a lifestyle, jiu-jitsu is where it's at.
Yeah.
As a way of life.
Right. You don't see a whole lot of old wrestlers.
It's just, you can do it forever, and you can. There's always, of course, wrestling, there's always new things too. But like, it's just a complete thing. You can work on your takedowns. You can whatever thing you have. Like, maybe your knees aren't good, so maybe you can't be doing too many takedowns or something else, right? The falls aren't nice on the body as you get older, right? So it's nice to have options, and jiu-jitsu really gives you those things.
I agree. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I hope to, like I said, kind of go out on my shield and do it till I can't. Yeah, I'm gonna do it to the end. Yeah.
Right.
Like a Heather Gracie or a Cross Gracie.
Right.
Stay healthy till the end. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any jiu-jitsu goals at the moment, but I'm working towards my 3rd black belt with judo, and I did my first judo competition a couple weeks ago. Looking forward to doing a few more of those.
What have you been up to since you know, because Flow Grappling took over like the Budovideos broadcasts, and I think BJJ Fanatics has grown a lot, right, in these last years of just market share and things like that.
Yeah.
What have you been doing? It's you said like 2015, last 10 years, I guess, pretty much.
Yeah, Budovideos is still strong. We have a ton of content on there. We still sell a lot of media for not just jiu-jitsu, but all types of martial arts. So there's probably like 10,000 different products there.
Wow.
Not only media, books, rash guards, gis, all that stuff. So the business is still strong there. And then I'm running Nogi Industries as well. But other than that, on the fun side, still training jiu-jitsu, training judo, and training partner acrobatics.
Partner
well.
acrobatics?
Yeah. So my girlfriend will do handstands on my hands and do
acro yoga. What do they call it?
Acro yoga. Yeah, some people call it acro yoga.
Yeah.
There's a few different names for it, but yeah, all these things. It was we were talking about earlier. The longer you're in this game, you got to do some things for health.
Right.
And yoga is one of these things. Taking the partner out of it, but yoga is one of those things that allows you to keep your flexibility.
Yeah. I was showing you some of the tag fit things that we're doing downstairs, recovery, and you had, and I'd mentioned Scott Sonnet. You're like, oh, I know who Scott Sonnet is, because you're always kind of on top of like just trends and things like that. Yeah. So how did you know about Scott Sonnet?
We used to sell a lot of his products back in the day. When
the creator of TagFit, right? Yeah. The RMAX TagFit.
RMAX stuff, yeah. He had some yoga products and a bunch of books and things. He even made a leg lock video at one point. So he was seen as an expert.
Mastering the saddle. That Eddie Cummings, they give him credit, right? A lot of the Danaher Death Squad, they were doing. He was cutting edge, right, ahead of the game.
barely hear his name anymore, but he's a very smart guy.
Yeah, what's his name? The Navy SEAL that gave Dean Lister his black belt. It's a black guy. Oh my God, it's bad. But yeah, he did a certification with Scott Sana, and he did a podcast on Jocko. He went on Jocko's podcast and was talking about how Scott Sana doesn't get enough credit, in the martial arts world, and also even in these other things like in wellness, right?
Right.
But a lot of people, he's changed a lot of people's lives around the world, including mine.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're involved with him.
Keeping me in the game, yeah. Did you ever play around with any of those club bells?
No, I mean just a little bit, but I never took a class or learned how to properly use it. But yeah, those things are great. Similar to kettlebells, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's an offset weight.
Yeah.
Makes a lot more sense than some gym workout.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that so? What you do yoga? What else? What else do you do to recover?
Yoga, acro yoga.
Yeah, you recover with partners, right? Like
right.
moving your shifting your weight and getting your brain right,
Yep.
connects your different parts of the body.
Body weight exercises.
Yeah, staying in the game, right? Staying in the game.
Got to. There was a point when I was training 5-6 days a week during my purple brown belt days where I was going to get massages once a week, chiropractic once a month, and I just decided, you know what, I don't like relying on all these other people. I'm going to take this into my own hands and started doing yoga every single day, and all those aches and pains just amazingly disappeared.
Yeah, people like stretching. They like to say the word stretching. Yeah, we're stretching. But in reality, right, you're releasing tension in your, I like to say that, like where you're releasing tension in the body from the stuff that you do so you can, recover properly, and then you can be your best in the next training session and for life, right? Because the thing starts to add up, and then you start to lose your mobility step by step, right? Because you get too buff, right? And you start to lose your movement capacity.
And some people look at yoga and say, oh, it's silly. Why do I need to do these weird poses? But it's that weird motion when you're reaching for something on a tall shelf that you pull your back. You know? I talk to a lot of jiu-jitsu guys who are in bad pain, and I ask them how it happened. Like, oh, I was just dropped something. I went to pick it up, or some simple movement. It's rarely
disconnected, right? They're disconnected.
That's right.
From that. Yeah, like the TAC, right? It's CST, circular strength training. And so it was like the moving yoga, the flow fit we call it, and then the club bell. Right, but it's the magic of those two things. But it's like strength, stability, and and then the connecting your breath with the structure and just staying connected.
Breath with movement.
Yeah,
that's the principle of yoga.
Yeah, so it's like moving yoga with club bells, But of course, we use the principles to apply to kettlebells or whatever we're doing.
Yeah, you got to do some of those things if you want a long life in a combat sport. You have to do something for your health. Otherwise, you're going to be all tight and crippled.
How about steroids in jiu-jitsu?
Man, so common.
Because you've been around now for a while, and it's interesting. I know from back in the day, like in the '90s, and guys there was no testing, right? And then there was, and there's a whole like guys like say that different people say different things about being natural and whatever, but it's just part of the sport in a way.
Right.
I remember like the only guy that I know that he did like TOT, the Dan Henderson, he's like the only guy that's like fully, he's like the toughest guy I think ever.
Yeah.
That's ever, like toughest fighter guy.
Sure.
Toughest like a natural dude, just tough, He did like TOT, but like he did it because he actually really needed it. But even so, like even he was the same guy before and after, right?
Right.
Compared to like a TRT Victor Belfort, right?
Right.
That's a different game.
Yeah, as far as a spectator, man, give them all the steroids. I love to see those big, like back in the Pride days. That was so fun to watch.
Yeah.
But and if you're focused on winning a world title, you know what? To be honest, you probably should do steroids because all the other guys are, and if you're not, you're at a disadvantage. But personally, as somebody who's not seeking that, competing at the Worlds, I don't want to mess with my hormones. And you look at a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, like big heads, bald heads. I don't know what the relationship is, but I've seen a lot of the, look at the older
bloated
guys.
stomachs, right? The growth hormone bellies,
Look at a lot of the older guys, and you'll see like, oh, you don't look natural. You don't look like your dad. So yeah, I prefer just to not touch any of that stuff and focus on longevity.
Yeah.
But I don't blame you. If you want to compete,
Yeah.
Why not use the tools that are there?
Yeah.
But there might be some risks to it as well.
Yeah. I've thought about it too, like in MMA, you know, because they did so many things, like the weight cuts. They don't allow IVs, right, to rehydrate, and you want to do stuff that's, I don't know what's worse, you know, like to do steroids or to not get dehydrated properly because of these rules, you know. So I don't know. Like just let them just do everything in a way, because people are still gonna find a way to do it,
right? To
cycle on and off, and might as well just let them do whatever.
So you'd be in favor of just allowing it all?
Well, because some guys, they don't do it anyway. They don't, but most people are, but some people aren't, you know? And whatever, yeah, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like the steroids they allow you to train more, right? They make you, you know, strong or whatever, but, you know, you still have to be really good.
Yeah.
So it might as well, I don't know. I think so, because guys do it anyway.
At what age do you think it's cool? 18?
Yeah, be an adult, you know. I think, I don't know, maybe early 20s, you know, like some of these schools, like gyms, putting their teenagers on them and stuff. Like, I don't know, man.
I've seen some young kids that look a little,
you know, like,
little sus.
I don't know, yeah. Even I don't recommend. I don't like it personally, and I don't like it for my guys, you know. I think you should just, not that you're not going to be doing work with it or without it, you know, but I think it's just more important is your mind, you know.
Sure.
Like the mindset and believing in yourself, and just not cheating, or not say cheating. I don't like the way you use that word, but kind of shortcuts, or not doing everything you can do. You know what I mean? First.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like really doing everything, all the, you know, your training, that you're they're having the best technique that you have, really studying, putting the hours in. I mean, some of these, you know, like some of these guys, like so many hours a day they're training, right? So doing everything you can, if you want to really be a champion, really doing all the things that you can do, you know, instead of like, and it's not because the guys on steroids, it's because they've done the work, right? Right. And you see it too, right? Guys that have done steroids or done a lot of steroids, that we know later on they don't really do much, right?
That's right.
They kind of phase out, or they're not really great teachers, great. They don't have the technique, you know.
There's a lot of examples of that.
And some guys that have done, and they're also good teachers and good, you know, they don't just go away. So I don't know. It's tricky, right? It's like, it's not an easy thing to have an answer to.
No, and it's something that if you're going to do, like, man, have a good doctor that can guide you through it. I've heard some of these big teams, you'll see a new prospect come in, they're like, hey, you show a lot of potential. Why don't you go talk to our team doctor over there?
Yeah, they have team doctors.
On the gear,
I know about team doctors, yeah.
So, like, if you're a small team, how do you compete with that?
They got their acai and on point. Their vitamins and minerals on point.
That's right.
Yeah. At the you know, you've been around it for now, you know, martial arts and stuff. Is it really just about winning tournaments?
No, of course not. I mean, well,
we're a little bit older now in life, right? And just kind of looking at the, you know, being around it, and is it, I mean, what is it really about, right? The martial arts journey.
For me, the martial arts journey is about the friendships you make along the way, the health that you develop through your training, the purpose it gives you, the skills it gives you, the confidence to protect your partner if you're out on the street. Not only that, but your neighbors. Like, and it gives you the leadership role. And, you know, when you're the toughest guy in the neighborhood, if there's a problem, like, you want to protect not only your loved ones but your neighbors too.
Yeah,
so I think it makes good humans. That being said,
makes us better humans.
Yeah. That being said, you look at someone like, I feel like this is the Today show today, but if you look at somebody like him who grew up in the favela, had nothing, like, his whole life changed because he got that world title. So even though I'm totally anti-steroids, I'm 100% natural, doing this for life, I see a guy like that, if he didn't win the world championships, he'd be nothing.
Yeah.
So I can understand these guys that do whatever it takes and take all the performance-enhancing drugs they can to get to that point. Like, I can't dismiss that. But for me, I'm all about the natural way and longevity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bigger than the tournaments, winning the titles, but depending where you're from, right? That for somebody like that, like, it is everything, right?
Yeah. Could be generational change for that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That movie was, even his name, I didn't know that it was from Whoop.
Yeah,
There It Is.
Whoop,
Did you know that?
I knew that. Yeah.
Okay. The today Whoop, There It Is, the song, and he didn't run, he just translated it, and he didn't understand that it said Whoop, There It Is.
Yeah.
Whoop, Whoop, There It Is.
Kids nowadays won't even know what song you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I know. It's funny.
It's an oldie.
It's funny.
Is it oldie now? Do we call that an oldie? Music from 20 years ago?
Ancient, right? I think they play it sometimes at stadiums and stuff,
Okay,
right? For sporting events.
Right.
What's next for Budo Jake?
Like I said, did my first judo tournament recently. I want to do a bit more because when I look back at my competition, as we were talking about earlier, takedowns were not rewarded. So I'm like, why am I going to spend all my time learning takedowns?
Right.
And I'm just going to pull guard. So I pulled guard in every match I ever did. And it worked well for me, but that was always my weakness. So now I've just dove head first into my weakness, which is the stand-up, and I've been learning a lot and thoroughly enjoying the learning process. So I got one ippon in my last tournament, and I want to get some more in the future ones.
Nice.
Just to become a more well-rounded grappler. I don't want to be one of these jiu-jitsu teachers that isn't good at takedowns.
Yeah, be well-rounded.
Even if we're not rewarded by the IBJJF point system, we should be good at takedowns.
Know how. Yeah, because if you're a jiu-jitsu fighter, you got to know how to take the guy down to the ground.
That's right. If you could take it down properly, end up in side control, then the whole problem of passing guard doesn't exist.
I've seen that. There's like a reel where a guy he gets robbed by some guys, and he's like, hold on. He takes his jacket off and takes his shoes off and puts a little mat down and then does butt scooting, Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
And the guys beat him up. Yeah, you got to be able to know your takedowns, right?
Absolutely.
For self-defense, for just real situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And then other than that, we're just making a lot of new content and products on Budovideos.com. So check that out. Check out Nogi.com as well. Black Friday's coming up. It's going to be tons of sales.
Hell
so
yeah.
Follow me on social media, Budo Jake on Instagram.
Awesome. I want to just one last question.
Yeah.
You had asked me what I think the best era is. So I'm gonna have a two part. One, what do you think the best era of martial arts was? As a lifelong martial artist, and then in your opinion, what do you think the best time was in jiu-jitsu? What you've seen?
Okay. Best time in martial arts, man. If I could go back and train with the Kosen judo guys in the 1940s, they were doing
1940s, yeah, X-guard, everything, right?
X-guard, De La Hiva, almost everything. Of course, it wasn't systematized like it is now, but those guys were ahead of the game, and it shows you how much knowledge existed in judo and how much was kind of lost. Carlos Gracie Jr. always had a good attitude towards this. I had asked him, what is the difference between judo and jiu-jitsu? And he said, we didn't develop anything new in jiu-jitsu. We just preserved what the Japanese people were doing when they went full on Olympics and stand up and kind of forgot.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, really? You believe that? For Gracie to say you didn't develop anything new? He said, no, they were doing it all before. And I, in fact, gave him the DVDs of the Kosen Judo so he could watch it. And he's like, yeah, look, they're all doing the same stuff.
Spider guard, X guard, butterfly, they were doing everything.
Yeah. The triangle, if you read, remember Higan Machado came out with the triangle book. Right. And he said in the beginning, we didn't even know what the triangle was. It was reintroduced into Brazil. It's for somehow the judo guys never taught it. I don't understand how that happened. But anyway, point being that this all existed before. So in Japan, and they kind of forgot it. But
they kept it. They kept it alive.
They kept it going in Brazil.
Wow.
As far as the best time in jiu-jitsu, I would go back to the TT team with Eduardo Telles and Terere. Like I said earlier, I think that was the pivotal moment between between traditional jiu-jitsu and old school jiu-jitsu, I'll call it, and modern jiu-jitsu. And I would love to have been in the room training with them at that time.
Guys doing the work. What era was that? Was that the early 2000s?
I think it was 90s.
Late 90s?
90s, yeah.
Yeah.
Or was it 2000s?
I think it was early 2000s. I think.
Might
Could be wrong, yeah. But they're all connected right at that point.
Right. The cool little yin yang logo with the two.
Yeah. What an era. What an era. Yeah. Thank you, brother. Thanks you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Alberto.
Yeah,
that was a blast. Good catching up with you.
You too. See you around soon.
Absolutely.